All right, so how did everyone do with the lecture last week? Anita?
Yeah, I am okay with that. Good.
Okay. Were you able to do the end of chapter exercises?
That's the only one I left.
Yes.
I went through the chapter, and I took all those exams whatever the 18 chapters.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so I took those, and I just did go through the reimbursement, HIPAA, and compliance.
Okay. How about you, Kelsey? How did you do with chapter 1 in the Buck book?
I feel like I did okay, but I have to be honest. I'm sorry I did not watch the online lecture that was posted last week.
Okay. That's fine. You guys will have time to watch it when you are able to. We've talked a little bit about it in our Health Insurance Today book because it's all about reimbursement, but I do suggest that you listen to it. And even if you listen to the lecture as you're going through the book, you know, to have the chapter open and watch the lecture, that would be a good idea. So I'm not going to go over the answers for chapter 1. When you guys are done with it, go ahead and send me an email. And then next week, I'll go over the answers with everybody. Okay?
Yep.
So send in the email that we watched it.
That you watched it, and so that we can go over the answers, yes. Because I don't want to go over the answers if you don't have it done. And then really wanting the answers ahead of time, you can ask me for them in the email, and I'll be happy to send them to you. So today is week 7. We're going to cover chapter 8 and chapter 2, and I know that sounds a little backwards, but we covered reimbursement and HIPAA in chapter 1. In chapter 2 is all about ICD-10, so we're only going to touch upon ICD-10 and what it's going to be about. In order to do that, we need to understand what ICD-9 is first. So, what I want to do is show you your ICD-9 book. You all have one, probably looks like this. And you can see that mine is tabbed. I don't know if you can make out the tabs very well.
Yeah.
So I just bought some tabs at the store. I have some across the top, and I have some along the edges in here. What I can do is take a picture of them and put them up online for you. Basically, what I've done is I have put some tabs where my guidelines are. And then for the alphabetic index, I've used the alphabet and just tabbed every section. And when we get into the tabular, because we are going to be looking up numbers, I have each tab numbered by the different sections. And then the back part of the book, I have my V codes and my E codes and the appendices. So hopefully How's that?
Wow.
So you don't have to get that involved. You can do it so that it's user-friendly for you. And that's what it's about, is you want it user-friendly for you. So let's go ahead and start with our Buck book, chapter 8. And it's page 199, I believe. Do you have the 2014 or the 2015 book?
15.
15.
Alrighty then. So your workbook is 15 also, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, someone forgot me. I still have a 2014. So some of my pages might not add up or be in line with yours. So I'll have to rectify that. All right, so we want an overview of ICD-9. Basically, we start with a classification system. And what I want you to do is to have your table of contents open in your ICD-9 book. So, the International Classification of Diseases, 9th edition clinical modification. That is what ICD-9-CM stands for. International Classification of Diseases, 9th edition clinical modification. It is designed for the classification of patient morbidity and mortality information for statistical purposes, and for the indexing of health records by disease and operation for storage and retrieval. Now, doesn't this sound a little bit familiar for what we did in our health insurance today?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not learning a lot of different stuff right now. WHO stands for World Health Organization. And the World Health Organization uses ICD-9 globally. Kelly, we're on page 199 in our Buck book. So in 1977, the U.S. developed ICD-9 version. It is a classification system that is totally compatible with its parent system, ICD-9. It allows for the morbidity and mortality statistics to be compared internationally. So why is it useful to compare disease data with other countries? And it's simply for statistical purposes. You're going to find that there are more code subsets to allow for defining medical care. The ICD-9 is updated October 1 of each year, and you must use new codes as of October 1. You will find occasionally that there's also updates April 1st with no grace period. And what that means is when they update codes as of April 1st, you need to start using them as of April 1st. So turn to page 1 in your introduction and your guidelines in your ICD-9 book. The information that I just shared with you is in the first paragraph here on the left-hand side and over on the right. And you'll notice that I underlined and highlighted it.
Why did you use different colors?
Just so that it sticks out for me.
Okay.
You can use pencil, you can use colored pens, you can use colored pencils. You have to use what's going to be easy for you, what sticks out nice for you. So you might just do a yellow highlighter. I want to be able to pull things out quickly. Sometimes when I see a whole bunch of yellow, it just looks like it's a constant run-on.
Yeah.
So I've had students get the thin Sharpie markers, the gel pens, the multiple colored highlighters. Again, it's whatever's going to work for you. I've had some students just use yellow highlighter and pencil or colored pens. So really you got to find what's going to work for you. So Medicare. The Medicare Catastrophic Act of 1988. It required the use of ICD-9 codes for diagnoses. The act was later repealed, but we still do have some codes to use out of it. Effective in 2003, all claims must have a valid diagnosis, but your ambulance suppliers are excluded. So, what are the uses of ICD-9? It helps the facilities to track facility usage through the codes. It also allows fiscal entities to track the healthcare costs. We also see it with research, the quality of healthcare, and what are the future needs. So you might have a new cancer center built if the patient usage warrants it. Look for particular outbreaks in certain areas of the country. This is where you might see new things being built for cancer or rehab for our wounded veterans. All different types of things. Pay attention to the news. You'll see that we have the use and the results evident in every day. The newscasters will reference an issue such as AIDS or the swine flu. Your newspaper articles might talk about measles epidemic. Those are the uses of ICD-9. So what are some of the principles and practices? There are 4 groups that function together to maintain ICD-9. And I'm on page 201 in your textbook. And page 2 in your ICD-9 book, right-hand column. So these are the types of things you might want to highlight or underline. They might be asked on the national exam, so you want to know where to find them. And that's the key to all of this, is knowing where to find your information, not about memorizing it. So when you're asked questions on your national exam, and they say, who are the 4 groups that function together to maintain ICD-9, you know that's going to be in your guidelines. So where in your guidelines?
I'm a little lost with you right now.
Okay.
Because when you were on 199, we were on 201. But I
Okay.
still don't see where the 4 groups are.
All right. So in your ICD-9 book, the section that I am looking at is called Format, and it says Tabular List Volume 1. So what page is that? In your in your textbook.
Oh. Okay, so that's 203.
Okay. So right above Format, that last paragraph, it says there are 4 groups whose function it is to deal with in-depth coding principles and practices. Okay? Hold on just a minute.
I still don't see the 4 groups. Do you?
No, I didn't get.
Oh. In this paragraph here.
Yeah, 4 groups.
Okay, sorry about that. So you're on page 203, I'm on page 201. So we'll have to just work through the kinks tonight until I get my book. So
Yep, that's fine.
up above Format, you should have that paragraph that says there are 4 groups. In your ICD-9 book, on page 2, on the right-hand column, I think it's the second paragraph that says these guidelines have been approved by the 4 organizations that make up the cooperating parties for the ICD-9 CM. And then it lists the 4 groups there for you. All right?
Yep.
Okay. So the 4 groups, as you can see, are the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, or CMS. They were formerly Healthcare Financing Administration, or you've heard them called HCFA. Then we have the National Center for Health Statistics, NCHS, American Health Information Management Association, AHIMA, and American Hospital Association, AHA. So what does ICD-9 do? ICD-9 documents medical necessity. The diagnoses establish the medical necessity. And your services and your diagnoses must correlate. So the correct diagnosis code will allow for you to get accurately reimbursed. You will see that you have fewer rejected claims, and it reduces the risk of sanctions and fines from audits. Now, do you have a screenshot in your book that shows you what's called a charge capture? No, probably not. I can't find it in my book, but it's a possibility that you have one. It would be right in that section if you had it. Let me see if I
All
can.
we have is the health insurance claim form.
Okay. Nope, that's all I have too. You would have seen it on in your health insurance today book. I think we had a screen capture in there where it showed you the diagnosis codes, the description. And then on the next page, you should have the health insurance claim form. When we fill that out, we try to fill it in to the best of our ability to make sure that we send the claim out clean the first time. And we had some of those in our health insurance today book. And I think if you go back a page, you probably have a box with the AAPC Code of Ethics.
Yeah.
Okay? If you haven't read that, that would be something I would ask you to read, because we want to make sure that we take our job seriously and we're responsible. But the other part to ethics is that our documentation must support our diagnosis. So, for example, the services are provided, then the diagnosis needs to justify the services. If in doubt, check it out. Do not make assumptions. Make sure you ask the doctor or your office manager or the nurse practitioner to clarify what you need so that you can bill it correctly. As a coder, you should have an in-depth knowledge of your medical terminology. You should also understand the guidelines, the terminology, and the conventions that are used in this book. And I cannot stress it enough. It is not about memorizing any of this. It's about knowing where to find it in your book. So if you take nothing else away from this class, remember it's about knowing where to find the information. Okay? Think of this as your dictionary. You're going to learn to use this like a dictionary. So why is coding important? Or let alone why is ethical coding important? Because it helps to keep the healthcare cost under control. Your third-party payers do not pay for services that are not rendered. So what is our job? Our job is to translate the documentation into ICD-9 codes. So, for example, Legionnaire's disease. All right, let's take our ICD-9 book. And what we're going to do is we're going to start in the alphabetic index. So turn to the section in the alphabetic index that starts with L. And just start to look up Legionnaire's disease. So Legionnaire, L-E-G. And when you find it, just stop. So Legio. Okay, so you see here Legionnaire's disease, and it gives you a code 482.84. So don't lose your page. What you're going to do is you're going to keep your hand here or something else, another pen or book or something, because you don't want to lose this. You want to be able to refer back to this if you need to. And this is something that you'll want to be able to do throughout, okay? You don't want to close the page on what you've just found because you'll have to go back and re-find it. So Legionnaire's disease 482.84. Now we're going to turn to what I call the tabular, and that's going to be in the fours. And it's 482.84. So go to the fours, 482.84. The edge of the pages probably are in red, and it will say disease of the respiratory system, and it will give you numbers 460 through 519. So turn to, you find 482.84 that says Legionnaire's disease. Okay, did you both find it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's how we're going to code. Now, they won't be as easy as that all the time, but you get the idea. We're going to always start in the alphabetic index, and then we're going to go into our tabular to confirm that we have the right code. Okay? So you can turn back to your guidelines in the front of the book, your ICD-9 book, page 2. Close the door. Would one of you close the door? Thank you. Is that room warm?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll ask them if they can get a fan on in there. All right. So it's our job to code to the highest level of specificity. And when we do that, we want to make sure that the medical record substantiates that diagnosis code assignment. So now let's move on to the format of the ICD-9. The format, you will see that volume 1 is the diseases. It is the tabular list. It is where you will find all the diagnoses. So it is 17 chapters. Volume 2 is the listing of diseases, and that is your alphabetic index. This is where you will find all the diseases and the injuries, and you will see that there are 3 sections. Volume 3 are your procedures. You'll have a tabular list and an alphabetic index. Volume 3 is for your inpatient procedures. All right, so volume 1, it will contain the codes from 001.0 to 999.9. Your diagnosis codes will describe the conditions. Then you have V codes and E codes. Your V codes and your E codes are supplemental information. So where we went first to look up Legionnaire's disease, that was your alphabetic index. Where we went second and looked up the 484.84, that was your tabular. If you want to turn and try and find your V codes and your E codes, they are going to be after your tabular listing ends, and they should start, the V codes actually will start with a purple color. So I
That's
have
gonna
marked,
be after the drugs and chemicals.
yep, keep going
yeah, I
all the
see
way.
it.
Yep, keep going all the way past 999. It's going to start with purple.
Yeah.
So that is your V codes. And this is for people who might need to have contact with health services, but are not necessarily sick. And we'll get into that more later on. After the V codes, if you turn to the green section after the V codes, you'll see that those are your E codes. And these are your injuries or external causes of injuries and poisoning. Okay? So with volume 1, the tabular list, you're going to see that it's divided into chapter first, then the section, then your category, then your subcategory, and then your subclassification. So if you turn to page in your textbook, it's going to be figure 8-4. It should say diseases of the genitourinary system. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll see that it gives you the chapter first, then it gives you the section, it gives you the category, the subcategory, and the subclassification. So these are things you want to pay attention to also as you're doing your coding. Volume 2. Volume 2 is your alphabetic index. This appears first in the book, but it might vary depending on the publisher. Some publishers actually might put it second. You will have terms and code numbers that are verified in Volume 1. Make sure you do not code directly from the index. You are not supposed to code directly from the index. Make sure that you read all of your notes and you follow all of the instructions. You will see underneath some codes it will say, see also, see additional, include, exclude. Then within the volume 2, you will have tables. You will have the drugs and chemicals, hypertension, and neoplasm. And they fall within the volume as part of the alphabet. So if you go to D, you should be able to find the table for drugs and chemicals. If you go to H, you should find the table for hypertension. And if you go to N, you should find the table for neoplasm. All right. Volume 3, as I told you, is not used for your physician services. This is for inpatient services. It has an index and tabular list for the code assignment of procedures and therapies. It is for your inpatient settings only. So it's right after your V codes and E codes, and it's one of the very last sections of your book.
110. Did you find the V code?
It has its own alphabetic index.
This is the volume 110. Yeah. Yeah, this is the
Did you find it?
volume 3. Yeah. It's the volume index.
So the volume 3 has its own alphabetic index and its own section for the tabular. Now, as an inpatient, you can use this whole book, but as an outpatient, you use only volume 1 and volume 2. Okay? So volume 1. Volume 1, there are two major divisions: the classification of diseases and injuries, which are your codes 001.0 through 999.9. Then you have your supplementary classification, which are your V codes and your E codes. With your V codes are V01.0 through V91.9. This is where the patient is not ill, but they encounter the health services, so such as vaccinations, or they might present for treatment, such as chemotherapy. Some of your V codes are primary only, such as for an encounter for chemotherapy. Some of the V codes also have factors that influence the patient's health status. For example, personal history of malignant tumor or organ transplant, birth status, and outcome of delivery. Okay, this is stuff we will definitely be going over more of. So don't worry about it if we talk about it now and then you forget about it, because we will have a whole nother chapter where we go over V codes again. This is just giving you an understanding of what is your ICD-9 book laid out. How is it laid out? What's in it? What do you do with it? Okay. So the classification of diseases and injuries. The main portion of the ICD-9-CM, as you see in figure 8-3 in your contents in your textbook, code 001.0 through 999.9. Most of your chapters are organ systems, such as digestive system, respiratory system. The main portion of the ICD-9 starts with chapter 1, which is your infectious and parasitic diseases, and it ends with chapter 17, which is your injury and poisoning. There are 17 chapters, and a section is a group of 3-digit categories, which represents the group of conditions or the related conditions. So again, your 3-digit category represents a single condition or disease. So let's talk about the format again. Refer to figure 8-4. This is a reminder that this is the format of each of your chapters. So the category code is your basic 3-digit code. Again, it will represent a disease or condition. Your subcategory is more specific. You will notice that gives you a 4th digit. Then your subclassification is more specific with the 5th digit. Each digit adds to the specificity or the detail. So if you turn to the page where you have figure 8-8 in your textbook, you'll see what I'm talking about. Figure 8-8, the 3-digit code is osteomyelitis. So that's our condition. Then our 4th digit, 0, tells us that it is acute. And then our 5th digit tells us the location is the shoulder. You always want to assign to the highest level of detail. If there is 4-digit code that exists, you do not report the 3-digit code. If there is a 5th digit code that exists, do not report 4-digit code. If it isn't documented, it cannot be reported. So let's move on to the appendices in the tabular list, which is volume 1. The appendices in the back of your book, Appendix A, okay? You'll notice that there are 5 appendices in the official ICD-9 book, and private publishers may actually have more, but this book usually you just have about 5 of them. So what the appendix do is that they provide further information about the patient's clinical picture. They might even give you further defining a diagnosis statement or help aid in classifying new drugs. The first appendix is Appendix A, which is morphology of neoplasms. This is used in conjunction with your codes from Chapter 2.
1075.
1075.
Okay? This appendix is used in the inpatient setting where cancer registries and claim forms will use these codes. The M codes are not placed on billing claim form. They're used in the patient's chart. The morphology of neoplasms begins with an M, and then it's followed by 5 digits. Your 4 digits explain the histological type of the neoplasm. The 5th digit is the behavior. If you turn to Appendix B, you'll notice that it's blank. It was deleted in 2004. Most of your psychiatric disorders are classified using the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or also known as DSM-4, Roman numeral 4. Appendix C is for drugs. The American Hospital Formulary Service publishes a list of all their drugs. It tracks the drugs nationally, and it's used by pharmacists. Each drug is coded with up to 6-digit code. The American Hospital Formulary Service listing also is correlated to the ICD-9 table of drugs and chemicals. You will find that new drugs are not identified by name. Rather, they are listed under the heading drug in the table of drugs and chemicals. So for example, if you were to look up antibiotics in the American Formulary Book, it would then correspond to the drugs and chemicals table in our ICD-9 book. Appendix D, if you turn to Appendix D, you'll see that this is a listing of all of the industrial accidents. It's a 3-digit code that identifies occupational hazards. It is not placed on insurance or billing form. It is used by state and federal organizations, also known as OSHA, which is Occupational Safety and Health Administration, to summarize industrial accident data. Appendix E, 3-digit categories. It's presented by chapter. The categories are labeled 1 through 17, followed by V and E code categories. And they provide a quick overview of the ICD-9 contents. Your volume 2 has sections. Volume 2 is our tabular. Sorry, volume 2 is our alphabetic index. And you wonder, why did they put volume 2 before volume 1? It doesn't make any sense, does it?
No.
But section 1 is the index to diseases. Section 2 is your table of drugs and chemicals. And then section 3 is the index to external codes, causes of injuries and poisoning, which are your E codes. So, and this is where it starts out alphabetically. So this is where I would start with the alphabet tabs, and I just start where the A is. Find the B, put my B. Find C, where does C begin, and put a C, so that I can get through these quickly. When you start doing your homework and you start coding, you'll recognize what I'm talking about. It will be quicker to be able to flip and go to that section quickly. Your E codes are never a primary diagnosis. Medicare does not accept these for professional billing. So section 1 is the largest part of volume 2. This is your index. The first step in coding is to locate the main bold term in the index, like we did with Legionnaire's disease. We located the bold term, Legionnaire's disease. You will notice that the subterms are indented 2 spaces to the right, and you might actually have more than one subterm. Your 3 digits are your category codes, your 4 digits are your subcategory, and your 5 digits are your subclassification codes. I want to caution you here about the alphabetic index. There are some words in the index that do not appear in the tabular, and it is just to save space. It means that the exact word may not be in the tabular description, but it is found in the alphabetic index, so you are then able to code it from the index. You will not find many of those in here, but if you do, that is why. So let's take a moment and turn to section 2, which is the table of drugs and chemicals. Okay, your drugs and chemicals will come after your your alphabetic index. What page do you have, ladies?
523.
Okay, great. I have 523. And this is actually one of those sections that I have a tab. I put a tab right up here. It says drugs and chemicals. And as I said, I'll try to take a good picture for everyone so you can see it. So you'll see in your drugs and chemicals that the drug name is placed alphabetically on the left underneath the heading substance. You'll notice that the first column is your poisoning. This is the code for the substance involved, meaning the wrong substance was given or taken. So what I want you to do here one moment, give me a second. All right. Now it's 70 degrees out there and I'm sitting here cold. Go figure. All right, this is what I want you to do. I'm going to use the whiteboard here, and bear with me just a minute.
We can't see you anymore.
All right, hold on. All right, bear with me here. So at the top of your book, you have all the columns, all right? So you have, and I'll turn this afterwards, okay? So give me just a minute.
Yep.
So the first column you have is poisoning. All right, and what it's saying is that this is the wrong substance was given or taken. So what you want to do, and let me write it first. All right, so here's your book. Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
No? Basically what you're doing is you're writing sideways in your book. No?
I can't. I can read poisoning, but not
Yeah.
underneath it.
Okay. What I wrote there is wrong substance given or taken.
Okay.
So that when you're coding, when you're in here coding, you want to have some notes for yourself. What does poisoning mean? So you have enough room there. If you write small enough with your pencil or your pen to put wrong substance given or taken. Okay? Then for the next one, what you want to keep in mind is that the poisoning can be accidental. It might be an adverse reaction from a therapeutic use. It might be an intentional suicide attempt, assault, or just might be undetermined as to what truly happened. You would list this code before the manifestation condition. And again, we'll get into that a little bit further, but I want you to be able to make the notes you need here in your book. So for the next one, okay, when we are coding from the table of drugs and chemicals, we're going to use E codes to identify how the poisoning occurred. So if an analgesic poisoning occurred by accident, we would use an E code. If we had, let's see, I'm trying to make sure you have an example in your book. So when we're actually coding for poisoning, we want to identify the analgesic, we want to put the condition, and then it was an accidental poisoning. So if an analgesic poisoning occurred by accident, what we want to do is put all right. Can you see those?
Yeah.
Okay. So what we have here first is we identify the agent, which is the analgesic. Then we're putting the condition. So the fact that an analgesic poisoning occurred by accident, they probably went into a coma. So then we're going to put the coma, the 780.01. And then we're going to put the accidental poisoning, which is the E850.9. So this would be the correct order to code for an analgesic poisoning occurring by accident. So you want to identify the agent, what is the condition, and then what's the E code. Okay? All right.
So you said agent, condition, and E code?
Yes.
Where is that?
What's that?
All right.
Analgesic, where is that here?
It's actually in this one. You go in alphabetical order. So it's page 529.
All right. So then we have accident next. At the top of your table of drugs and chemicals, we have accident, the next section. And this is unintentional. So you would want to write unintentional. So write sideways underneath accident, unintentional. Then we have therapeutic use. And what that means is that the correct dosage was administered, but there's adverse effects. So an allergic reaction would be an example, an allergic reaction.
So is that what we should write in there?
Yes, allergic reaction, adverse effect. All right, then we have suicide attempt. And all you want to write next to this or under this is that it must be documented. Must be documented. And then assault is intentionally inflicting harm. So intentional. You can just write intentional. And then for undetermined, you can just write unknown. All right, so that takes care of your table of drugs and chemicals. All right, your E codes, we talked about being a supplementary classification of the external causes of injury and poisonings. You'll see that they are alphanumerical designations for the injuries and poisonings. So if you go to the E code index again, what page do you have?
646.
Okay. You notice that it's an alphabetical listing, and you have alphanumeric codes. They will all start with the letter E, okay? You will also see that it provides additional information about the external causes. Give me one moment.
What is it? Where is Doreen's text?
All right, so also remember that your E codes are never going to be a principal diagnosis. And then once you look up the alphabet, look it up in the alphabetic index, you would go into the tabular to confirm that you have the correct code. So it's very similar to how we find the ICD-9 codes. We're going to look up the E code in the alphabetic index, the external cause, and then we're going to go back into the tabular. Make sense? So far, so good?
Yeah.
So figure In your textbook here, give me a moment. They don't really have one in the book. You would basically, in your index, in your alphabetic index, look at the main types of the accident. So what's the main term of the accident? Is it a collision? Is it an accident? Is it a burning? Is it a collapse? Is it a fall? Is it a fire? Those are the types of things you would start with, and then you would move on from there. Your subterms would be indented. All right, let's move on to the volume 2, the neoplasm table. The neoplasm table should be on page 351. You have that page?
Yes.
Yes. All right, so the same thing with the neoplasm table. You have up across the top, primary, secondary, carcinoma in situ, benign, uncertain, and unspecified. So there are 2 steps with locating the neoplasm code in your alphabetic index. You locate it by its name over on the left, and you just go down to the body part. So what are neoplasms? Neoplasms are tumors. Okay, and for each site, there might be 6 possible code numbers that might be assigned. And you have to understand, how do you determine them? You determine them by if they are malignant. You would specify if it's a primary or a secondary or an in situ. If it's benign, you would specify if it's uncertain behavior or unspecified behavior. Your morphology codes are used for inpatient. Because we're doing outpatient coding, we won't have it to address that. But your morphology codes are used to supplement the neoplasm codes. So you will see main terms. You might have them as bold typeface. So we want to be in the section in our textbook that talks about main terms. I'm not sure what page that is in your book, but we start out with the ICD-9 official guidelines for coding and reporting. The ICD-9 CM index utilizes 3 levels of indentation in the alphabetic index. They are your main terms, your subterms, and your carryover lines. What page is that in your textbook?
214. 214.
214?
Yeah.
Thank you. So let's take, for example, let's look up the word pain. So to go to your alphabetic index and look up pain. And then if you just pick any one word, you'll notice that it's indented. So underneath pain, abdominal, acute, arch, arm, back, bile duct, bladder, they're all indented. They're subterms. And what happens is that each subterm allows for additional specificity, higher detail. You will notice that in volume 2, you have things called non-essential modifiers. They are enclosed in parentheses. It means that they do not have to be in the diagnostic statement. They do not usually have any effect on the code whatsoever. They just give you more information to help you choose the right code. So let's say we need to clarify a diagnosis. For example, ileus. And then in parentheses, we might see adynamic and bowel. Well, that helps us to clarify the diagnosis when we see those essential, non-essential modifiers. All right, over on to the next page, conventions, ICD-9 CM conventions. We have punctuation, we have brackets, parentheses. You might see italicized and bold type. You will also see symbols. Some abbreviations like NEC and NOS. NEC is for not elsewhere classifiable. NOS, not elsewhere, not otherwise specified. You will see notations throughout your book that includes, excludes, use additional code, and with, code if applicable. The definitions of your conventions are provided in the front portion of your ICD-9 manual. I suggest if you haven't looked at the front of your book, you do so. At the bottom of the pages in the ICD-9 book, you have legends that indicate what the red dots mean, and the plus sign, and the green triangle. So all of these things, they're at your fingertips. You just need to learn how to use the resources. When we say, when we have abbreviations as NEC, NEC means no more specific code exists. When we have NOS, it means that it's unspecified in the documentation. When we have brackets, when we talk about brackets and slanted brackets, I'm not sure what page you're on in your book.
Oh, 219.
Thank you. So 219 in your book, brackets and slanted brackets. Brackets will enclose synonyms or alternative wording or explanatory phrases. They will be used to identify your manifestation codes. They will be helpful with additional information, and they do or can affect the code. You will find them in the tabular list. So, for example, what I would like you to do is in your tabular section of your book, I want you to look up code 253.6 in the tabular section.
What was the number?
253.6. What did you come up with?
Other disorders of neurohypophysis.
Yep. So under this,
Which page?
you'll see that it states syndrome of inappropriate secretion of antidiuretic hormone, or ADH. So if you were to say other disorders of neurohypophysis, people aren't familiar with that. But if you say ADH, people are familiar with that. So you have to pay attention to the brackets, slanted brackets, that type of thing. All right, on to etiology and manifestation of diseases. Before you do that, let me talk about slanted brackets before we turn the page, sorry. So your slanted brackets, they enclose the manifestations of the underlying condition. So you'll see when you see the slanted brackets, it will say code first underlying disease. You'll notice that these are used in volume 2 quite a bit. And then we have parentheses. Your parentheses over on the next page. The parentheses contain the non-essential modifiers. You can take them or leave them. They're informational descriptive terms. They're found in the tabular list and the index. They do not affect your code selection. All right. Your italicized and bold type, your colon and your brace, your colon, this is in the tabular. It completes the statement with one or more modifiers. Your brace, this is in your tabular list. It modifies the statements to the right of the brace. What I do like about this textbook is that it does give you some very nice examples. So if for some reason you're still having trouble even after you read the examples, just let me know. Your includes and excludes and use additional code. When you see includes notes, you're going to see them in the chapter, the section, or the category, so they will appear in tabular 1. The excludes notes are conditions, tells you that conditions are coded elsewhere. And your use additional code is for an assignment of other code being necessary. All right. All right, turn to and with. And with. And with means and or. So if I say to you 237.0 is a neoplasm of uncertain behavior of pituitary gland and or craniopharyngeal duct. Go ahead and look up page code 237.0. So it should say neoplasm of uncertain behavior of pituitary gland and or craniopharyngeal duct.
Yep.
Okay? When you see with, I want you to look up 070.41. 070.41. Okay, you should see acute hepatitis C with hepatic coma.
Hold on.
Yep, no problem.
Viral hepatitis A without mention of hepatic coma. Is that what you said?
Acute hepatitis C with hepatic coma, 070.41.
Oh, 0.41.
Yep.
Sorry. Okay, got it.
Okay, excellent. All right.
No. That one's the alphabetic index.
Yeah.
This one's the popular.
They split. What did she say? With
To 070.41 is what we want to find
07.
next.
Oh, okay.
All right, then turn the page and let's talk about cross references. So in your textbook, let's talk about cross references. You will see, when you see these, it will direct you to see also, and see category. See directs you to a specific term. So if we look up panotitis, go ahead and look up panotitis, P-A-N-O-T-I-T-I-S, panotitis.
You want to do, oh, okay.
It says C. otitis media.
Yes. Perfect. All right. So then you might. Yep. See also see otitis media. So go ahead.
So that doesn't have any C. Oh, okay. C. Oh, that is. Oh, okay. Then you have to go alphabetic, like that
It
is
tells
media.
you to go to otitis media.
That's alphabet or index.
Alphabet.
Alphabet. Still all alphabet. Okay. Find it?
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's look at perivaginitis. P-E-R-I, perivaginitis.
Then go to vaginitis.
What does it say?
Go to vaginitis.
Does it say C also?
Yes.
That's what you want to look for. The cross references.
See how.
So that was when I should have left my finger on, right? So I didn't
Yes.
lose it.
Yes. Gotcha.
So since the numbers match, that means then you're good.
Yep. Then you're good. This was more an exercise in your cross references. So then let's try mesencephalitis. 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 So mesencephalitis, what does it say?
See also encephalitis.
Then what?
And then late effect. C category.
Yes. So we have the C, which directs you to a specific term. We have the C also, which directs you to another term for more information. And then we have the C category, which directs you to specific information about use of the code. So you want to make sure you're always in the right category, the right section. It will direct you to the tabular list. Okay? All right.
So category means go to tabular list.
Yes. All right, turn the page. Code, if applicable. Any causal condition. This is basically going to be an instructional note. It may be a primary diagnosis if there's no causal condition applicable or known or documented. This is used in the inpatient setting to identify the reason for admission. Then we have notes. In volume 2, we have notes, which define your terms. And notes are just used to define the main terms and provide specific coding instructions. So if you were to look in the index for melanoma, it would say note, except where otherwise indicated. If you look on page, on figure 8-12, it gives you an example of a note. Your notes can also be used for the 5th digit subclassifications for your subcategories. Eponyms, turn the page, eponyms. Eponyms is how we started out. Legionnaire's disease is an eponym. It is a disease or syndrome named for a person. Then we have procedures in volume 3. 90% of these codes refer to surgical procedures. Again, these are used for inpatient. 10% will refer to diagnostic and therapeutic. The format is very similar to that of volumes 2, where you have the main term and then subterms. With volume 3, your table of contents, you'll see chapter 0 are your procedures and interventions. Chapters 1 through 5 are operations on organ systems. And chapter 16, miscellaneous diagnostic and therapeutic procedures. You should have a figure 8-15 in your book. That lists the table of contents for you for volume 3. In volume 3, the conventions are the same as those in volumes 1 and 2. The alphabetic index contains the terms the same way, but they might not appear in the tabular list. So when the exact word is not found in the tabular list of procedures, but it is found in the index, the code is given in the index is correct. So then you would trust your index in inpatient setting. Again, we're not going to be doing a lot of inpatient coding, so this is informational. Your terms will be in bold, your subterms not bold. If you look at figure 8-16, it shows you an example of index to procedures. Again, the index is alphabetical. You want to ignore single spaces and hyphens. Your cross-references are the same. You'll have many operations that are named for surgeons, so you'll be looking them up by their name, so the eponyms. The format is again the same as volume 1. There might be an exception where volume 3 has 2 digits before a decimal. You also will have figure 8.17 shows you the format. So you'll have the category, the subcategory, and the subclassification. And then lastly, let's talk about bundling. Bundling, you just want to make this note. Bundling is the opening and closing of a surgical site that is included in all surgical procedures. You will not find this probably in your book.
Where's a good place to write it in?
Page 242 in your textbook. Opening and closing of surgical site is included in all surgical procedures. The opening and closing of surgical site is included in all surgical procedures. Do not unbundle and code separately. All right, and that is it for chapter 8. Any questions? Pretty clear overview, yes, no, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gives you a good foundation to get started?
Yeah.
Yep. So are we doing these exercises and chapter review for homework?
Yes, chapter review, in chapter exercises if you didn't do them. Let's take a quick few minutes here and we'll come right back. All right, ladies, we ready to move on to chapter 2?
Yep.
All right, so with chapter 2, it is an overview of ICD-10. So we just learned about what is ICD-9, and this is a short chapter. Now, do both of you have access to the Buck Book on Evolve?
I believe so.
Let me
No,
check.
no, we don't.
Okay. I will write myself a note.
And are we having quizzes for these chapters? Well,
Yes,
when will those be online?
as soon as I get access to the 2015. So it could be by the end of the week.
Okay.
Okay. So ICD-10 is scheduled to replace ICD-9 by October 1st, 2015. It was originally supposed to be October 1st, 2014. So in your homework and your exams, you want to make sure you put October 1, 2014 because this was done before, unless your book says 2015.
It says both. It says it used to be 14, now it's 15.
Okay, there we go. So what will ICD-10 give us? It will give us more relevant ambulatory and managed care encounter codes. You will have expanded injury codes, combination diagnosis and symptom codes, and it will be up to 7 characters, whereas before we only had 5. You also will see a lot of updated diabetes codes with a greater overall specificity. The structure of ICD-10, if you turn the page, you will see that it now has 21 chapters, and your V and E codes are incorporated into each of the code sets. They did add chapters for eye and adnexa and ear and mastoid process. Over on figure 2.1, that is what we call a gem file. It is a mapping file. It is how you map from ICD-9 to ICD-10. And if you turn the page to figure 2.2, you'll see that you can map backwards from I-10 to I-9. With ICD-10, you will find that there's GEM flags, and there are 3 types of flags. You have approximate flag, and it is a direct match from I-9 to I-10. The flags will range from 00000 and 10000. If you see a no map flag, it just means that there is no diagnosis code available. If you see a combination flag, it requires a combination of codes to map from one system to another. You will find figure 2.9 that the index for your ICD-10 is very similar to that of ICD-9. You have your main terms and your subterms. But as you notice in the figure, it starts with an alpha character. So your ICD-10 codes will now start with an alpha character, and they could be up to 7 characters long. The exercise I want you to try in this chapter specifically is exercise 2-2. It tells you right there in the very beginning how to do this exercise. Click on your course documents, your resources, your student resources, coding updates, tips and links, and then GEM files. So you can do this exercise 2.2 in on Evolve. It has what you need to do this exercise. Okay?
Yep.
Over on figure 2.10, this is what your tabular looks like. Figure 2.10 or 2-10.
On exercise 2.2, sorry.
Yep.
Do we have to wait for the book to be on there to do it?
I'm sorry, say that.
For exercise 2.2, do we have to wait for the bug poke to be on there in order to do it?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
All right. So the tabular looks very similar to the ICD-9. Each section begins with a unique letter and codes are arranged in numerical order. You have official instructional notations in ICD-10 the same way as you did in ICD-9. You have includes. So if you look at figure 2-11, you'll see that they give you an includes. If you look at figure 2-12, you'll see they have use additional and excludes one. Excludes one means that it is not coded here. Excludes two, turn the page. Figure 2-13 means it is not included here. And we will not be coding ICD-10 except for that exercise, so you don't have to worry too much about coding. But what excludes two means is that you cannot code what you find in here if it says excludes two. If it's part of excludes two, it means it's not included in this diagnosis code. Code first and use additional code means the etiology and the manifestation paired codes. So it will say code first down there on figure 2-14, code first. So if someone comes in with streptococcal sepsis and you look up that code, it will tell you right there, code first. Is it post-procedural streptococcal sepsis? Code also means more than one code is required. If you look at figure 2-16. Myelophysis. Code also the underlying disorder, such as malignant neoplasm of the breast or tuberculosis. Your 7th characters and placeholder X. Codes less than 6 characters will have a 7th character requirement, and it will have a placeholder X. As you see there in figure 2-17, 2-18 on the next page, you'll see that anything less than 7 characters has a 7th character placeholder, or your 6 characters have an X as a placeholder. Over on, just turn back a page to figure 2-17. I want to talk about the initial encounter, the subsequent encounter, and the sequela for just a moment. Someone who comes in with a personal injury, whether it's workers' compensation or a motor vehicle accident, when we code them for the first time, if it's the initial encounter, you would put an A at the end of those codes. And you would probably end up with a X as a placeholder, but you would have an A. As you can see up above, what they're saying is, for the initial encounter of a sprain of an unspecified acromioclavicular joint, the correct code is S43.50. But if you read further on, they tell you you would put an X placeholder and then an A because it's the initial encounter. If it ended up being a subsequent encounter, you would add the D. So subsequent encounter means every visit after the initial encounter. And then for a sequela, that is someone with a late effect. And that could be anything from a burn to radiculitis or a neuropathy. Those are called late effects. And so you would code using the S for sequela. And that's it for chapter 2. You should be able to do the chapter review on this as well. And using the gem files, as you did for exercise 2-2, you should be able to do the practical. If you will give me just a moment, I want to go on Evolve and see if I have, okay, I do not. So I will work on getting the Buck book up and ready for you by Friday. I will probably only get like the first 5 chapters created for exams, but as soon as I have it, you will get an email inviting you. It will say something along the lines, your instructor has invited you or enrolled you in a course. Do you have a silver scratch box on the inside cover of your books? Can you look for me and let me know?
This one here. Oh, this here.
The inside cover of your book.
That must be right.
This is
So you have like a little cardboard with a code.
Do you want us to scratch it off now?
No. When you get the email from me when you get the email from Evolve that says your instructor has invited you or enrolled you in a course, you're going to use the code underneath that silver box to enroll in the course. So what I'm going to do right this moment, let me see if I can All right. I won't take the time to do it right now. So, any questions from tonight, ladies?
No.
How about you, Anita?
No,
All right.
done.
So next week is going to be all the homework. So chapter 1, textbook and workbook. Plus chapter 8, textbook and workbook. Chapter 2, you only have to do exercise 2-2, plus the chapter review and practical. Let me check the workbook real quick to see if I have that. I had you doing all the true and falses, and using the gem files. You can do so workbook and textbook for all of those 3 chapters. So chapter 1, chapter 8, and chapter 2. And then for next week, I would like you to read chapter 9 and chapter 10. When you're reading those chapters, you can try, you can do the in-chapter exercises also, so that you can come to class with questions if any of those don't make sense to you.
Chapter 9 and 3.
9 and 10. So for chapter 2, you only want us to do exercise 2-2?
Right,
Is that what
and
you
the
said?
chapter review and practical,
Okay.
and then the workbook.
Okay.
All right, takeaway from tonight, Anita.
Yeah. Sorry, I left my son. That's one. I'm just trying to. Thank you.
Okay. Kelsey, your takeaway?
It's definitely more intimidating now.
You will do fine.
I hope so.
So we've got a busy week next week. Come prepared.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, have a great night.
You too.
Thank you. You too.
Take care.
See you.